So those job numbers, when you take a look at them at the first, man, do they look impressive. 339,000 jobs, 339,000 jobs created in the month of May. That looks wonderful. That looks great. That looks like everything we should be super excited about. We can get going with. And finally, this economy is back and moving in the right direction. My gosh, Joe Biden's a genius. Hold on, wait. What is that? No, it's not good. It shows that the economy isn't cooling. And is anybody looking at the productivity numbers? Oh gosh, no, that would involve spoiling the narrative. Now, wouldn't it? Guys, welcome to the show. Good to be with you. Presented by Americans for Prosperity, AmericansForProsperity.org, economic liberty, free speech. That is what it's all about. I bring in the Economist Dr. Matt Will from the University of Indianapolis. Look, if everything, sir, that we have seen from Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve is meant to cool the economy, bring things down a bit, bring down that inflation, get things to a relaxed spot, the job numbers show that that's not working. It's counterintuitive for a lot of people because you see 339,000 jobs when I think the estimate was only 100 some odd thousand, and people say, all right, people are getting back to work. This is great. Explain to me why it's not great.
Well, Tony, it's not terrible, but it's not great. I mean, can anybody read the report? Does anybody read more than a headline? I'm asking the question for a friend of mine, and I think the answer is probably no. If you read the report, you find out a few things. First of all, unemployment went up from 3.4 to 3.7. Wages are up 4.3%, but inflation is up 4.8%. So people made more money, but they still got a lower standard of living. Let's emphasize that, Tony. Everybody this last month had a lower standard of living. And then if you go sector by sector, Tony, let's look at that. Can we spend a moment and just say, if you look at the growth in jobs, it was slower than last year in construction, manufacturing, transportation, leisure, total goods production, technology. In fact, technology dropped last month. The only groups that grew, Tony, the only two, ready for the shocker, government and retail. So when you go out to have your dinner tonight, they don't have enough labor, and the government is growing faster than last year.
Let's take a deeper look at this right here. This is from the BLS reports, non-farm business sector labor productivity. As you're talking about productivity, sir, decreased 2.1% in the first quarter of 2023. And as output increased 0.5% and hours worked increased 2.6%. My God, that's a massive level of gobbledygook right there. When you talk about the output here and the drop here, you looked at these jobs numbers and immediately took yourself to what they released yesterday in these productivity numbers. The productivity numbers come from where? And they should tell the American public what?
The productivity numbers come from the same place as the unemployment report. The same, you go down two lines on the government website. Productivity, Tony, is how much you produce per hour of labor. Now, we're not going to include you because you produce off the charts. But the economy as a whole last quarter, 2.1% less. Tony, last year, you and I, people in this economy, produced 7% less. Tony, I went back in history. I couldn't find a year in the history of this country since we started keeping this data where productivity declined. Every American citizen is producing less. That's not natural, Tony. We improve, we're more efficient, we're producing less. That is a problem, and that's a problem of government directly related to this White House, and we can talk about why, but that's a problem.
Idea of producing less. But we still haven't gone over why these jobs numbers aren't good. So we have more people going to work. Why am I not, just as a baseline, not cheering that? I get that the unemployment number can be up, but the unemployment number can be about people who have dropped off the rolls, can be about people looking for more employees, so the unemployment number could go up. There's a series of things that can affect that. Why overall am I not cheering this number? Why is it a glass half full and glass half empty situation?
Well, Tony, the reason the unemployment rate went up is because less people are in the workforce. We're not improving the number of people that are looking for jobs. There are still the same percentage, since Biden's been in office, we've seen a record decline in the number of people participating in the workforce. They're not going back to work. So you talked about the debt deal, and you've been talking about that on your show. But the reality is it did nothing to fix the problem. We're still spending the same amount that we did before. All we did was say, oh, well, that money we didn't spend for COVID relief, well, we're not going to spend it. But there was no cut in spending. So money is still getting in the hand of the consumer, Tony. It's just not a direct subsidy for rent or wage subsidy. Instead, it's going through a subsidy for windmills, and it's going through a subsidy if you buy some green energy product, you get a tax credit. The money's still flowing, Tony, from the government. It's flowing massively.
The $30 billion that you're referring to was a clawback that came in this debt limit deal that just passed the Senate. Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis, as we talk about these jobs numbers. But I want you to get much more base with me. I want to get much more to this common denominator. 339,000 jobs when you only anticipated 100 and some odd thousand jobs. Tell me in a sentence, in the elevator pitch for everybody, why is it not good?
Why is it not good? Because Meta, Goldman Sachs, Amazon, Grant Thornton are cutting jobs. Red Robin Hamburgers is hiring. That's why it's not good.
You see, now that's an understandable thought. I mean, this is the problem. We are so into the manipulation of the numbers. We're so into the manipulation of the data. We don't break it down into its thing. I don't mind a job at Red Robin. Yum. I love bottomless fries, sir. Your argument is that where we're getting the cuts from, where the companies that are shedding, the companies that are losing, are a greater indicator of the problem than the companies that are hiring. But I would go the other way. If the Red Robins of the world are hiring, doesn't mean that people across America have more expendable income and feel more comfortable going out and spending that, even with prices, food prices, especially restaurant food prices, higher than ever.
Let me say this again, Tony. You have more money in your pocket by 4.3%, but inflation went up 4.8%. You can't print money in your way to prosperity. And that's what's happening. Yes, Tony, you have more money in your pocket, but your standard of living went down last month, and it went down the month before, and it's been going down every day since President Biden took office.
Can I tell you, we've had this conversation before, you and I, Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis, where I've said that I get that things are bad. I feel it and I see it and I'm aware of it. I'm aware of it and my sponsors and everybody else. Yet when I go to a restaurant, it's full. And yet when I go to the mall, I see people shopping. And I have been unable to really on a regular basis square that circle. I cannot figure out how those two things mesh and come together. But lately, we're starting to see some signs. We talked about it when it comes to the automotive industry. We haven't seen new cars, so that led to pressure on used cars going up because that was the only car market. Then, since we had no new cars, we don't have enough used cars, and now people aren't buying used cars because the interest rates are so high, and they're actually fixing the car they have. We're also seeing this in the cigar world. You know that's part of what I do with my Eat, Drink, Smoke show. Imports are down because of supply chain and because people who have gone back in a post-COVID world don't have the time to smoke cigars. So that's going to have an effect on that industry as well as we've seen price increases in that. So is everything that I'm seeing about people still utilizing a luxury good? They're still in the restaurants. They're still there. This is a false positive. This is people thinking they have more money in their pocket and not yet realizing what many of us have already seen. This is turned the other way, and this recession conversation is not only in front of us, we're in it.
Well, Tony, also add one other thing. We are still living in a post-COVID rebound. We still don't have the number of retail businesses we had before COVID. We don't have the number of restaurants we had before COVID. So when you go out and you see all this activity, it's not because there's demand, it's because there's shortage. There's shortage of restaurants. There's shortage of retail workers. There's shortage of places for you to spend your money. Don't confuse the two.
No. I think that's a super good take, and we've talked about it in terms of a series of things. How many more jobs would be out there if the amount of businesses that existed in 2019 existed today? That's the argument you're making.
Yes, and there's data to show this. Anyone can go to Yelp has a lot of interesting data on this, and they do research on business openings and business closings. It's easy to find.
Now, I must ask, Wayne asked this question, leaving me a comment. People are finding a second job to make ends meet. Being overworked isn't creating a job. Now, I that second part we can agree or disagree about. But is what we're seeing in the job market a relationship to second jobs to make ends meet because of the inflationary pressures?
No, not necessarily, Tony. I don't. I mean, yes, there's a second job issue involved in the whole equation, but I think what you're really seeing is people just not back in the workforce. You know what? I know this is maybe a little off topic, but we've seen that a lot of people who had layoffs during the pandemic have said, "Oh, look, I can survive with a one income household. Our standard of living is lower, but we like the fact that the mom or the dad is home with the child." And so I think we've seen a shift in the socioeconomic environment that we didn't see before the pandemic.
In that same conversation about a shift, because I believe that is absolutely true. Just like businesses have been shedding people and saying, wait a second, we could survive without all this bloat. And people, I think, have watched, for example, Twitter, for example, and all the people Elon Musk has gotten rid of it, said they can still survive and they can still thrive. Okay, maybe we can do more with less as well. But the thing that you brought up earlier was about the productivity. And that was the number that you were really looking at. That came out on Thursday and nobody talked about it. Of course, the debt ceiling deal took all the oxygen out of the room. The productivity numbers, as you see it, are the ringing bell we should be listening to. Go through it again. What does it tell you? And what do you think it means for the future?
Well, Tony, every month, every time this comes out, I mention it and nobody ever covers it except you. What it is how much you and I produce per hour of labor. And you have computers, you have word processors, you have cars, you have better transportation, you have better technology. All of history, we are more productive today than we were last year. You and I produce more per hour of labor. Under President Biden, the first time in the history of this country, we are producing less. Last year, it was 7% less. That's because the government is getting in your business. They're regulating you. They're telling you you can't have a car. Tony, what is happening this year? You've seen the government is forecasting rolling blackouts for about 80% of the population. Why? Because on day one, President Biden signed executive orders reducing the amount of energy in the economy. So the president has said, I want you to be less productive. I want you to have less energy. So we are going to have rolling blackouts. Thank you very much, President Biden.
So now this takes us to what to expect. Talking to Dr. Matt Will, economist at the University of Indianapolis. What does 2023 and into 2024 look like? I know it's prognostication. That's not your game, but when we take a look at these numbers today, the markets went up. You often discuss the fact that these are nothing more than drug-addled, what heads, and they don't actually pay attention to the real situation. But you also discuss how markets sometimes bake these realities already into the price of things. Has the market fully understood? Do you believe that it fully understands where this economic upheaval is, where this lack of productivity is, and where it's going?
Tony, you can't ask 20 questions and expect a 30-second answer.
I can. It's part of my charm.
First of all, the market's going up because of AI and NVIDIA. There's a whole new productivity from the private market that's causing the market to go up. That's a good thing. That will continue. But the regulatory environment is not going to change. I don't forecast the future, Tony, but I know cause and effect. And I know that this administration is going to continue to harm productivity, and you're going to see it all throughout the next year and into the following year. Lindsey Graham is a guy that's always said, elections have consequences. Well, guess what, people? You've lost a bunch of elections to people who are socialists in essence, and you have this high regulatory environment, and this is what you get, and it's not going to change.
The question was whether or not the markets have it baked in. Are the markets engaged right now in a way that makes you feel like, yeah, they know the productivity is down and will be down, and these prices make sense? Or do they not have it baked in and we expect prices to go down in the markets even further?
No, Tony, it's both. The markets have it baked in because they see bad regulation, they see bad government spending, they see bad productivity. That's true. But they also bake in other things like AI. I can't emphasize enough that the private economy is so powerful and robust. It can overcome government obstacles. So what you're seeing is the market is saying, yes, bad productivity, bad regulation, bad spending, but good AI, good new technology development, good other things happening in the economy that grows the economy. I love capitalism, Tony, because capitalism thumbs its nose at government and says, we're going to work our butts off anyway and do better.
Dr. Matt Will, he is not AI. He is the real deal. Economist at the University of Indianapolis. Sir, I appreciate you taking time. Appreciate you taking the time. I should learn how to speak if I'm going to do radio. Appreciate you taking the time to be with us. My thanks to you. My thanks to everybody who's been watching. My thanks to AFP, our sponsor, Economic Liberty Free Speech. Find the chapter near you, AmericansForProsperity.org. Good people doing good work. And I'll catch you next time